Leda, hello.
Hello.
So we're here, episode 31, as I mentioned, of the Treatment Room Secrets podcast. I am out of my comfort zone for a few reasons. I mentioned to you, one, I don't have a mic to stare at right now, so I have to stare at you while talking to the audience, everyone who's really listening to this or watching this. That's one. Number two, we're in where are we?
Horse barn.
Horse
or
barn,
stable, whatever you want to call it. Yep.
Surrounded by a few horses here. I'm ready. You saw how before I caught myself name or calling out a horse with the wrong name. So I was happy about that because even spending 24 hours here, I'm starting to already recognize some of the names of the horses. So they are beautiful. So anyone listening, watching this, you might see some horses, you might hear some horses, you might hear some goats, you might see some cats. So we have a bunch of everything. We just mentioned we have a cat walking through right now. So it's really cool being here. I learned a lot from you the last couple of days. You really lived up to all the expectations that I had. I think it's super interesting. Seeing you work with horses, seeing how the horses respond to you and your connection with the horses is pretty cool. So I'm here with Leda Mox, I'm pronouncing it correctly, Leda Mox, a horse massage therapist. We're here in Minnesota, Becker, Minnesota. Super cool place, an unusual place for us to film a course. Usually it's in a studio, usually it's in a clinic, a physical therapy clinic or a massage therapy clinic. Here we're surrounded by animals, surrounded by space, surrounded by trees, and surrounded by manure as well. So why horses for you?
Well, when I was younger, it was always a dream. You know, the little girl wanting a horse is kind of, I think, the American dream.
Yeah, like the
lot of
pony,
times.
right? The pony is
Yeah, you know, you got to have a pony. And I was lucky enough to have some family members that we would go out in Wisconsin and visit their farm. So it was my father's uncle who had horses out there. And when I was just a 2-year-old kid, they put me up on a horse and I had a tantrum when they tried to take me off. And I think that just started lighting up my interest with horses.
So the tantrum was to keep you wanted
I
to
wanted
stay
to
on.
stay on
Usually
the
it's the
horse.
opposite, I would
Yes.
assume. Like my tantrum when I was 6 that I was telling you about.
But yes, I loved them. I was always drawn to them. And when I was about 8 or 9 years old, we moved to just a little 5-acre hobby farm. And the neighbors across the field had a big Arabian horse barn. And as a 9-year-old, I would walk across the field and go bug them every single day until she finally let me groom and brush a horse. And it was, I think we were about a couple of days in, and she finally came over and told my parents that I was showing up at the farm. And my parents said, well, you know, can you give her riding lessons? And
So it kind of made sense to your parents that you liked.
Yeah.
You like horses.
As a young kid, I was venturing out, like I'm talking through a probably 3-acre field by myself to go to this horse barn. I was just drawn to them. And it was their help that I got my very first horse to lease. And my dad helped build a barn, and we got our first horse when I was 10.
Wow, and did your parents know how to maintain, work with,
Nothing.
Raise horses?
Nope, nothing.
So it's kind of a journey you guys figured out together?
Yep. It was, my parents just knew that I would stay out of trouble if I had horses in my life because it did keep me grounded and busy.
Were they right?
They were right. I mean, I probably would have gotten in a heck of a lot more trouble if I didn't have horses to be responsible for and come home to.
So what, from the age of 10, you almost felt like a parent to this to the horse?
Yeah. I had responsibility. You know, my dad would always say, you know, do you want to have a life and go out with your friends, or do you want to have horses? And so it was kind of a choice that instead of going out partying all night, I always knew, hey, I have to go home and do chores. So in my later teen years and getting into adulthood, I always had that responsibility.
So what is it like? So you're living with a horse, raising a horse. How much responsibility does it take?
Well,
From
you
you.
need to be able
And,
to.
and here, by the way, you have 18 horses, 20?
We have 16 horses on site here.
16 horses?
Yeah.
But if we break it down to one horse, if you live with one horse, what are the chores that surround that? Coming from someone that, again, I rode a horse twice, 20 something years ago, and this morning walked by you for 3 minutes. So what does it consist of?
Well, you always have to make sure that they have enough food and water and clean up the manure. I always say they really have us trained because we need to care for them. They don't care if we're sick. They still need to be fed and watered. Otherwise they rely on us.
Are they unforgiving if you don't?
Well, they kind of get a little upset if you're late feeding them. I had my one horse that I really had a connection with when we were at county fair one year, and I was late and everybody else in the barn got fed before him. He actually gave me a nice kick in the butt as I was hanging up a hay feeder. I mean, it wasn't a hard kick, but just enough to let me know he was pretty upset with me.
To warn you.
To warn me. Like, I had a nice hoof print on my butt.
Don't let it happen again.
Yeah, he was upset. And then he was the same horse. When I was growing up, we did high school rodeo. So we would camp at the rodeos for the weekend. And my horse was a Houdini. Even though we had portable panels that we would house him in, he was the one, he could always get out of it somehow. And we had a little camper with a screen door. And if somebody else got fed before him, he knew how to open that door. And he'd pop his head in and nicker at me like, "Come feed me, lady. Like, everybody's getting fed. It's time."
Yeah, and we saw a glimpse of that this morning too with one of the horses, right? That I was impressed that it even knew how to push the lock of the gate.
Oh yeah, he's like, "It's feeding time." They can tell time, I swear. That's pretty fun.
The county fairs. Can you give me a quick rundown of what that is, and is it an important part of the horse raising culture?
My kids, I grew up doing 4-H. It's a great educational, you said, my parents and I didn't have any clue what we were getting into with these horses. And 4-H really taught us the husbandry, how to handle the horses, how to take care of the horses. It just was a great educational
And is it like
atmosphere.
a government subsidized educational program?
So it's through the states. Every state has kind of an extension office that the 4-H counties are overseen by.
Yeah.
And it's a state run. Every state has a 4-H program. You just have to kind of seek it out and look to see where everything is. But each individualized county in the state has usually a county fair. And this is where the 4-H kids can highlight their projects that they've been working on. So it's more than just horses even. They can do photography, they can do sewing, they can do speech and demonstrations, anything that the kids are interested in.
And the county fair includes all of those?
Includes all of
not
those.
Specific to horses,
Yep.
but is a horse like in areas like this, is our kids more attracted to horses,
Of
let's
course.
say, than other
Yep.
things?
Yep, we're kind of, I would say we're the hottest attraction at the fair. So everybody, if they want to go to a fair, they always want to come see the horses.
Yeah. And then there's a few different events, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So there is a pleasure show and then a game show. And so the kids can all dress up and do different events like Western pleasure, hunt seat equitation, showmanship. Now they've added ranch pleasure.
So what does that mean, pleasure?
It's like there's a judge who comes and will actually score the horses and the riders in different events at how well they present their animal and how well they communicate with their animal.
So communication is a big one.
Communication is a big one. And then the games part of the show, that's all timed events.
Yeah.
So you have a judge to make sure everything stays fair and keep the rules. But then you're running against the clock.
And that's like the barrel racing.
That is barrel racing. They do pole weaving, keyhole, and jumping figure 8. So they have a jump and then have to go around 3 barrels.
And is that something they used to participate in?
Yeah.
These different events?
These different events.
I don't know if the mic can pick up on that stream. That's a horse peeing, I'm assuming.
Yes, that is.
Letting the hose loose.
He's nice and relaxed in his stall. Yep.
Awesome.
Or she is nice and relaxed in her stall.
Yeah, very nice. So yes, what was your used to compete in these? Did you have a
So I competed in those. Barrel racing was always my favorite, and poles. You know, everybody thinks it looks easy, and it's
what is the pulls?
The poles is they have 6 poles set up where you have to weave in and out of them, go around the last one, and then weave back as fast as you can without knocking any of them down. And that's the challenge because people's feet stick out or knee or elbow, and you have to do it at a high rate of speed. So
Because you're running against
the clock. So
and it doesn't help if you get the best time, but you knocked a pole over or something.
If you knock a pole, they add seconds to your runs.
Oh.
Yep. So it's a penalty.
I see. And so all these events that are like presented in these different fairs, do they continue into professional realms, into adults, participating in these things?
Yeah. So you can show at different levels. So AQHA has all of these same events, just at a different level. So adults can compete on this.
Yeah.
You have different organizations like WSCA, which is Western Saddle Clubs. And so like my class, I'm in the 35 plus category, but I can still compete.
And do you?
As well. Yeah. Yep. Not so much. I've been the show mom lately, so I've been cheering my daughter on and helping her. So now I became 4-H leader and I'm supporting my daughter, and my son doesn't want to go too fast.
Yeah.
So he doesn't like the horses as much as my daughter does.
He's busy with baseball.
Anyway. He's busy with baseball.
Yeah. And you said you work not just your daughter, but other kids as well, other 4-H kids that work with you.
Yeah.
So that means that someone that, let's say, as in your position when you were a kid, without access to horses, without a way to learn about horses, so other kids who don't have that now can come here. And be under one of your programs.
Yep.
And then does that last for like a certain amount of time, or?
So usually, like for me, I'll lease some of my horses out for these kids if they don't have a horse of their own, so that they can learn what this is all about. So they practice with the horses, and it has to be, I do a year lease. So that way they get to know the horse. It's not just like, they know the horse for a week and then hop on and show at fair. It's a whole process of learning and getting to know the animal that you're riding, because you have to communicate with them.
So do you think like people like myself who I don't have, the closest animal I have a connection to is, the dogs that I live with or grew up with, or my parents' dogs.
Yeah.
But that's it. But whoever does have an animal, even a dog, you feel it when it's you feel a connection when you spend, a certain amount of time with that animal. You do feel a connection to it. You feel that it has a connection to you as well.
Absolutely.
Do you think people like myself though underestimated someone who hasn't grown up around horses? Because unlike maybe some other animals, horses, they're in every movie. So many genres of movies. There's horses all over the place. Horses living, horses dying, horses going to war, horses being trained, raced. And it almost seems like the actors in the movies, it almost seems so easy to control the horse. But just sitting on a horse or getting on a horse is pretty difficult. So do you think that maybe that's why we underestimate it? Like, if we see Brad Pitt, riding a horse like it's the easiest thing in the world, then I can sit at home and assume that it's just easy to control and to communicate with a horse. Meanwhile, it's not. So what is that communication like with a horse? Does it take time? Is 1 year enough?
It does take time, and with some horses, it takes longer than that. I mean, it's forming a bond with them. Just like when you sat on the horse today, he raised his head and he even looked back at you like, who is on me right now?
Yeah.
Because you're a stranger, so he's just not used to that. He's like, what's this person? And they really feel your energy too. So if you're nervous and you're getting on a horse, they're prey animals. So they're like, why is he nervous? What's going to happen? They're already feeling what you're feeling.
Yeah.
But if you can stay calm and relaxed and confident, then they're going to feel that too. So it's very much controlling your emotions and doing that. I think that's why horses are such great therapy animals for people, because they will mirror your emotions and they will help you through a lot of things with that.
Is that something you've felt?
They're very sensitive to that, yeah.
And is it something that people seek out as a therapy method to start communicating or riding? and learning that way.
Yep. And there's all kinds of therapy programs where there's no riding involved. It's just you and the horse and really feeling that connection and bonding with them.
But what do you think it is? Like, it makes people realize things about themselves
It does.
through the eyes and the actions of the horse?
It makes you really look internally. And I've had a lot of students that come to the massage classes, and, you know, even working with Pete, he's the trusty 29-year-old. He's nice and quiet and calm. But if you have somebody that's got
Pete the horse, by the way.
Pete the horse. Yeah. If you have a lot of stuff going on internally to where you have anxiety or you have something going on, he will get anxious and he'll be dancing around and not wanting to stand still. And I almost have to pull that person aside and just be like, okay, what are you feeling right now? And if they're like, I'm just really nervous, it's like, okay, you're nervous. You need to just fake it till you make it a little bit, calm yourself down, and then reapproach. And if they can get their emotions in check, then the horse is going to calm down too. But if it just doesn't work, then, you know, we can try a different horse. Different horses are more sensitive. The younger Arabians that we have here they're used to all of our stuff that we do with massage and stretching here. But if you get somebody who's really nervous, they kind of get more high strung. Like, they feel that energy. So then they're like, whoa, what's happening? You know, people have an energetic field of 3 to 5 feet. Okay. So like you and I, we're about 5 feet away. This is a good, comfortable position. But if I were to come and sit right next to you, right, that's our intimate layer. That's what we save for family, friends, people, partners that we're close to. Horses' energetic field is 100 to 150 feet. So they can pick up your energy as soon as you walk in the barn. So if you're having a bad day and that horse is like, whoa, I don't want that crap today, they're going to kind of step back, and they might not let you catch them out in the pasture. They might not want you to approach them because you're having a bad day. And they feel that as soon as you walk into the barn. It's amazing. They're just amazing beings.
And so sensitive, as you said, like just to the energy, and also awareness to themselves. You said like they have also like extra layers of sensors that we don't have.
Yeah.
Touch, and how's their smell as well?
Their smell, yep. They have that olfactory system. So, I mean, a stallion can smell a mare in heat from a long ways away. Yeah. And it's that nature, you know, if they get lost from their herd out in the wild, they can determine by where they need to go.
So it's a sensitive animal, but at the same time, so it can almost feel us from up to 100 feet away. Yeah. But at the same time, you know, like it's an animal we've used as like cars, as a vehicle for so many years, like almost imposing ourselves onto them. Do we know how that happened, how that started? Like, like in retrospect, looking, you know, now and hundreds of years back, I don't know, thousands of years maybe, or even more, but it almost seems like a perfect marriage.
It is.
But was it always, like, was it so intuitive to the humans that this is the perfect combination?
Well, you know, if you look at Native Americans, I mean, these were their partners. They rode bareback. They didn't have saddles, so they really had to trust that connection with that horse in order to carry them to war, carry them, you know,
so that's something, like war, you know, war. So the horse will, you know, run into danger. Like, you know, you watch a war scene in a movie from the past, all the horses are dying. Game of Thrones, all of the horses are dying immediately. The first casualties of battle.
I don't like to watch those parts.
Yeah, I'm sure. But you know, so what is that in terms of the communication, the connection with the human on top of them? Because they'll just run straight into danger. And I'm assuming they sense that they know they're running into danger.
You know, it's really funny. Out of all the horses that I have seen and met in my life, horses want a purpose. They want a job. If they're just out in the pasture or whatever, they do. They need to have that purpose. So a lot of times, like, their purpose is to come and help us with whatever we're doing, whether it be a barrel racing partner. Like, if barrel racing is their job, they love their job. if it's to, go into battle. Like they know that is their job, that is their purpose. They want to do that. They get a little lost sometimes, and they can go through depression. They can grieve. They can do all that. I mean, I've seen a horse cry twice in my life.
Cry like a human?
Cry, like have tears. And it's one of those things where we don't give them enough credit. They're way smarter than anybody thinks that they could be.
Why, what made those two cry?
Well, the first instance is when I was younger. That very first horse that I told you that I leased when I was 10. Her name was Midge, and she was a 20-year-old Arab. And we decided we wanted to breed her. She's had babies before in the past, but not since I did. And so we took her to the stallion to have her bred. And I was this, teenage little girl, and I was talking to her in the barn and how excited I was for a baby horse and just all this. And she just kind of stood with me, and she just kind of water dripping down. And I was like, what is the matter? Well, we found out later that week that the breeding didn't take. So she knew she wasn't pregnant. And I think that she was just like feeling like she was letting me down because I was so excited for it. And so we found out from the vet. So, it's sometimes with horses, it does take multiple times to let them settle and get pregnant.
Yeah.
And the second time it took, and she was just so happy. But I'll never forget that out in the barn, because I'm like, are you crying? Like, I couldn't believe that what I was seeing, but it was like tears coming down her face. And I'd never seen that before. But then she did have a beautiful baby. He's 32 years old now, and I actually have him still.
Here?
Yes.
Wow. What's his name?
His name is Liberty.
Very nice.
So we call him Libby, but I mean, I was 12 years old when we had him. So that was his name.
Amazing. And he's with you until
he's
today.
still with me. Yep.
And the second instance?
And the second instance, we had a class that we took. So I volunteer for the Minnesota Hoofed Animal Rescue. And this was a horse that was, his name is Rio. He was a beautiful white quarter horse. He was a national pleasure show horse level, but he was in his older years, and they tried to retire him. He was put out to pasture and just kind of forgot about. He didn't have a purpose. He didn't have a job. He lost a ton of weight. He never had maintenance done on his teeth, so he wasn't able to get the proper amount of feed that he needed, and he was skin and bones when he was at the rescue place. So the massage students all came, and we were kind of playing with essential oils and massage and everything with him. And because he was so skinny, we couldn't really do a ton of massage on him, just very light work. But we gave him one of the oils named Sarah, and that's usually used for like emotional trauma. And he actually smelled it and licked it off of the student's hand. And then we kind of just all started in on the massage stuff, and the student was like, oh my gosh, he's crying. And we all went over there and looked, and he had same thing like that. I mean, it's been years later since I've ever seen that, but I'm like, my gosh, he is. And after that point, he turned a corner in his healing, and he started to gain weight. And he was like, he knew there was going to be another chapter of his life then, I think.
Yeah.
And he was adopted by this little tiny, I want to say she was like 5 or 6 years old little girl. She started showing him in pleasure, and he looked phenomenal, and he's loving his life now. But it was really kind of cool to see that he just needed to release that in order for him to move on.
Yeah.
Like he let go of the past.
So cool.
It was just neat. So
yeah,
I mean, it's interesting when you see those moments.
So then I'm assuming, as part of, I asked you earlier about the chores, like daily chores of raising such a thing. I'm assuming they have to be active. You were telling me that wild horses, they move around like 25 miles a day.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yep.
So I'm assuming it's pretty difficult to get 25 miles into your horses every day. So what do you do to keep them moving and engaged?
Well, riding them, working with them.
So it's very, time consuming, right?
It is. And not everybody here gets ridden every day. but positioning their hay away from their water, so they have to walk back and forth multiple times a day to just get their miles in. Different creative ways to set up their pastures. There's one thing that we saw on the internet called Pasture Paradise, where they actually have like a track around the whole pasture, so it keeps the horses moving. And it's just like us, if we continue to move, it helps our gut health, it helps our blood flow, it helps circulating. It's very beneficial for them.
So they need it. So but the wild horses, so that's what they say, 25 miles,
yeah,
25 miles a day. And what do they eat out in the wild?
They forage on anything, the grasses, anything they can find out there. And the horses are so smart. They know what weeds to stay away from that are toxic to them. They know what plants to seek out if they have a stomach ache. Like, they're very smart. They have a lot of intuition that guides them. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, so cool. And the communication with the horses, also something I was asking you about this morning, looking at your daughter riding. So on the horse, what is the communication? You said hands, feet, and there was something else. Also sound, right? Because you do make sounds, you say certain words to them.
Yep. So your riding aids are anywhere from your thighs, your legs, your calves, even your butt. So if you clench your butt cheeks, your horse feels that through the saddle. Hands are connected to the reins. Think of it as like a whole circle. Yeah. The movie Avatar, if anybody's ever seen Avatar, where the people actually plug into whatever animal they're riding, it's kind of like that. Like your connection, there's this flow of energy that goes through you and the horse, where if you have that connection, you can think it and the horse will do it. And you'll start getting your muscle memory down. But when you're competing or riding, you hardly have to move, and that horse knows exactly what it's supposed to be doing. And it's just a very natural communication between you. Yes, there's other communication devices. Some people wear spurs. Some people ride with a crop. Some people have different aids to kind of help in that training process of what you're going to be training that horse for. But the more natural you can keep it, the better.
And do you feel that, like you specifically, communication with your horses that you've had for so many years, because you have a couple over the age of 30, you just mentioned one, Liberty, who's 29.
Pete's 29, Libby's 32 this year.
Wow, so that's, so amazing. So over time, do you also feel that communication with them getting easier, better? They understand you better, you understand them better?
Yes, they understand us better, and we understand them. So my 33-year-old, she actually is blind. So the last couple of years, she's had just progressive blindness. She lost her sight in one eye, and now it's progressively getting worse in the other eye.
Is it cataract? Do they get cataracts?
It's moon blindness, so uveitis, inflammation in the eye. She had a bad head injury a couple years ago, and I think just from that and the scar tissue, it really affected her vision on one side, and it's one of them things. But she has to trust us with our voice when we're walking her through gates, when we bring her into the barn, into the stall. Yeah. She listens to us. When we tell her, ho, to stop, she stops. When we tell her to step, she knows there's a step coming. So it's kind of like we have to help her through some of the obstacles that, she faces on a normal day. Yeah. And it's trust. They have to trust you, and we have to trust them.
And do they live as herds?
They do.
Horses?
They're herd animals. It's really hard. They're not as happy by themselves. Yeah. It can happen. Yeah. Some horses live by themselves and do very well, or you can get them a buddy of a goat or something. But
yeah, so does that help? Because I'm assuming there must be a lot of people that own one horse, or that raise one horse at a time. So is it important for them a companion?
Yes.
Of some sort? Even a goat?
Even a goat.
That's amazing.
They're herd animals, so they like to have a buddy.
So, and do they act here as a herd? Do you see those characteristics of a herd when you have, like, you're 16 here roaming?
Oh yeah. So we have them in kind of smaller groups instead of everybody all together, because we have a couple more dominant ones. So they're the boss of the herd. So you get that hierarchy going on. You have the one who, sets the mood and the tone, and he doesn't take any shenanigans. When he comes to the bale, everybody else gets out of his way. And then you have the low man on the totem pole. And he's kind of, he'll challenge sometimes to get up a little bit, but it's definitely that herd dynamic.
So interesting. And
you have a leader who takes care. And they even sleep in shifts. So like if one person is protecting and overseeing the herd, the other ones know, okay, it's my turn to rest, and they'll lay down and take a nap and be comfortable, and the boss will kind of look around for danger and be able to warn everybody if something's coming.
In the wild, do we know how many, like what is the number of horses in an average herd?
I have no idea.
You don't know that? Yeah.
No.
Interesting to, I'll find out.
Yeah.
And then, and the lifespan of a horse, what is the regular lifespan of the average horse?
Well, now that we have all this wonderful medical equipment and technology, the lifespan is a lot older now. I'd say your average age of a horse is going to be like around 26 is probably kind of that older
and
part.
Okay, in comparison to like what was the average age, I don't know, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, from what they used to say?
I'd probably say maybe 19 years old.
And what age, like, so you say 26-year-old now, but at when is really the limit for them to go to shows, to perform?
We just had one at the show that was, how old was Kodiak's horse, Eclipse?
32.
32? Yeah. So
32 and competing.
But
like race horses.
Race horses, that's a whole different story.
Yeah.
So they start them young, usually races 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, and some of them only have a career until they're 6 and they're done.
So that's like the peak of athletic abilities.
Yes. Yep. And, barrel horses, between that 6 to 8 age is a good competitive age. Usually in their teen years, they start slowing down or having joint issues and things like that. So
slowing down and joint issues is a perfect bridge into what we've been talking about the last couple of days.
Yeah.
We spoke about stretching for horses specifically and massage for horses. We'll get into those. I wanted to ask you about because you mentioned different oils that you use as well for different reasons. So what you mentioned like a specific oil mix for emotional trauma for the one that cried.
Yeah.
Forgetting his name.
Rio.
Thank you. So what are some other things that you use oils for? Is that something common when working with horses?
Yeah, so I think people are getting more aware that you can help the joints and everything, and they have a lot of anti-inflammatory properties with the oils. Mm-hmm. So the oils are just plants.
Is it similar to oils that the humans use as like alternative
exactly
therapy?
The same. Yep. You just always want to be careful what oils you buy. Like, don't just go to the grocery store and pick up the oils on the shelf. Like, if they have any synthetic properties to them, or if they're labeled as fragrance, you don't want to use those on your animals. You want to use the pure oil directly from the plant, unadulterated, just like wintergreen, for example. Wintergreen for people, high anti-inflammatory. That's typically what's in all of your liniments or your Bengay or anything that you would rub on if you have pain going on in your body. Well, the pure wintergreen oil is great for the horses as well, because we can rub that over the joint, add a carrier oil. So a carrier oil is just a dilution so that it's not as strong for them.
Yeah.
So your extra virgin olive oil, fractionated vegetable oil, all those are good carriers. And it just kind of tones it down a little bit. So that way it's, not too intense for them.
Yeah.
But great for the joints.
And how do you recognize like a joint issue with a horse? Like the first thing that comes to mind is maybe something obvious when you can see one of them limping or changing their biomechanics.
Yeah.
But are there other indicators of like spotting pain points or noticing something wrong without them showing it biomechanically? Because as an example, like humans, if you're an athlete, you can feel something wrong with a joint or a muscle, but you kind of know how to compensate and pretend like everything's okay or demonstrate that everything's okay mechanically.
Well, and horses are great at compensating. because if a horse in the wild is hurting or lame, they have to fake it, because you don't want to be, out there limping when you have a tiger or a lion or something that's ready to pounce on you, right?
Yeah.
So they try their best to hide it of any place that's going to be, sore or anything. So it's really hard sometimes to detect a lameness in a horse because they compensate.
Yeah.
So you get 4 legs. So if one of them's a little sore, they'll compensate usually on the diagonal opposite side to help with that pressure of that front leg. But you can see it in their gait analysis, in their biomechanics. You can even hear it sometimes, like if you're on a concrete surface, of which foot they're tenderly walking on. But to diagnose true lameness, the vet needs to do that.
Yeah. And you said something interesting about, like, you mentioned the gait of the horses, and I caught something you said earlier where the lower part of the horse's legs doesn't really have any muscle in it, and it's mostly ligaments.
It's got a little bit of muscle, but it's all tendons and ligaments. So below the horse's knee is equivalent to our wrist and hands. So we still have, the tendons and ligaments from our hands, but it's similar to us. And then their back leg is equivalent to our feet. So if you look at a horse,
from the knee down.
Well, if you look at a horse and put a person on all fours, the front legs are actually going to be your hands, your wrist and your hands. So their knee is considered our wrist joint. And then their back leg, their hock, is considered in the same as our heel.
Super interesting.
So they're walking on their tippy toes and their fingertips.
Yeah. Super interesting. And then also something that, like, anatomically about a horse, which is maybe more similar to a dog than to us, is that also, I think we discussed this, we were talking on another podcast about the, like, how much weight our pelvic bone has to really, like, holds all of our upper body weight. When a horse, it's a bit different.
Yeah. So horses don't have a collarbone. So their front legs are attached to their body through a muscle harness. So we call it the thoracic sling. And so it's a group of muscles and ligaments, lamina, that hold their scapula onto their body. So when you have a shoulder injury in a horse, it can take a long time for them to heal because they can't ever really shift their weight off of it. And so with massage, we can help speed up that process a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. So you made the bridge for us into massage. So we've been talking about massage and stretching for horses specifically. So how did you get involved, as working with treating horses? You had this passion that you discovered, you started learning more about it, now you're taking care of a horse. So at what stage of your life did you decide, or just by living, kind of lead yourself into a position where you are, that's your life now? You're working with horses, you're trying to make them better, you're trying to maintain their lives, you're trying to make them more efficient, more perform better and feel less pain. So how did that start for you?
So when I was showing in 4-H and wanted to start doing more of like high school rodeo and really get serious about barrel racing, we went and bought a horse at an auction and came to find out later that it was an older horse and he had already some arthritis in a knee.
But why were the papers fraud?
He wasn't registered, so there was no papers, and I was too young. I didn't know about checking teeth for age or anything at that point. We were told he was an 8-year-old. Turns out he was 18. So that was our big learning process when I was young. And he was such a good horse though. Like, he was the horse that I could get on. My dad didn't worry that he was going to hurt me. He just was that trusty horse. Yeah. And because of his issue with his knee, he would always stumble on the first barrel. Massage was always something that was in my wheelhouse when I was young. My mom was a hairdresser, so she'd always ask me to rub her shoulders because her, neck and arms hurt all the time. So I'm like, well, if it works on her, let me try it on him. I had no idea what I was doing. Yeah. I just knew that I had to rub and try to get this because I knew he was getting sore in there. Yeah. Just instinct. Did
you have like an idea of where he was getting sore in the body?
I honestly had no precise clue of anything. I just knew that leg bugged him. Okay, and that's the one he tripped on all the time. Yeah. And it wasn't until I went to a barrel racing clinic down in Texas, and with a very, prestigious, she's still around. I went to a Martha Josie barrel racing clinic, and she had her own massage therapist that worked with her horses at her high competing level. And I was totally just in awe of this woman. And it kind of sidetracked me for the whole other thing I was there to learn was the barrel racing.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh my gosh, I can do this as a career. And I actually missed my last day of my senior year in high school and went and learned massage myself. So it was from that moment on that I absolutely loved it. I came home and he was my practice dummy. And I worked on him and I saw so many changes in him. And I was able to ride him all the way up through college rodeo until we retired him. He was 28 years old. So I had 10 years on that horse.
Yeah.
That when I first
where
got
he
him,
wasn't tripping over the first barrel
where he
anymore.
wasn't tripping over the first barrel. And so I'm always grateful that I got to learn these skills because it kept him going.
Yeah.
And he ended up being a lesson horse and taught a lot of little kids how to ride after that.
Yeah.
And finally I had to put him down when he was 36 because his knee just started to really fail on him.
The same one that was...
The same one, that was the problem. So...
Yeah. And then, so is that where most of your practice came in those 10, almost 20 years?
Yeah,
with him?
I got my hands on as many horses as I could. I worked my way through college working on the university horses.
Yeah.
I got to pay my rodeo entry fees when we were there for the weekend. I got to work on a lot of the rodeo horses. So I didn't just work on barrel horses. I got to work on roping horses, the team roping horses, calf roping horses, the pole bending horses, and I got to really see these athletic, abilities of these horses, and that really helped me understand what each discipline has a little different issues with.
Yeah. And when you started this, was it, because you're in this world, you're probably seeing people that own horses, ride horses, go to events, you're teaching people. Was it accepted, or did they think, was it seen as something maybe crazy? Was it seen as something maybe time wasting? What was the reaction to people around you?
Back then, it wasn't that well known. I did have a connection. My dad actually worked for a guy who owned racehorses. So me coming in as a 19-year-old young girl, he had horses at Canterbury Downs in Minnesota here. That was our racetrack. And he talked his trainer into letting me massage his horses. And the trainer was kind of like, oh goodness, here's this young horse crazy girl. So he kind of gave me a few horses to work on. And after he kind of saw what I did, because he watched me like a hawk to make sure I didn't wreck his race horses.
Yeah.
And after that, he had one of his horses achieve its fastest lap. And he was like, okay, you're going to come again, right? And it was just kind of started to blow up. So then word of mouth started to go, hey, this lady's massaging these horses over here. Come try this out.
And people, sorry.
And then it just kind of started to build from there.
Yeah. And so did you find when people see the potential positives that can come out of it, that now they're suddenly opening their eyes to it, excited about it? Do you think people are more likely to help their horse than help themselves, let's say, if it's something like a joint issue, like a knee issue, for example? There's many people that live with these issues without ever seeking help. Just, you get used to it. You take painkillers, you take anti-inflammatory medicine or whatever it is. But maybe now when you have a horse that has a joint issue, are people, do you find, based on your experience, more determined to find a solution for it, invest more money into finding a solution
Definitely.
to it?
Yes. I have a lot of clients who they're hurting, they've been bucked off. Like any horse person has fallen off at least a dozen times.
Yeah. And you said you were run over a few days ago?
Yes. Run over, kicked, trampled, we're just glutton for punishment. But the people will take better care of their animals than they take care of their own body. And I see a lot of trends with horse owners that the horses will compensate for the rider. And so it's really important that if you are massaging your horse or getting chiropractic done for your horse, you're also doing the same for your body. Because if you have a weaker side, that horse is trying to overcompensate for your weaker side. So then I see issues develop in the horse because of the rider imbalance.
That's super interesting. So if I'm riding the horse and I'm maybe putting more weight onto my right side, then they'll feel that and overcompensate themselves.
Yes.
And because of that, building up some injury,
Yes.
some...
Yep, because the biggest question I get is, why are they sore? How did they get this sore? What is it from? Other than saddle fit issues, it can be the balanced rider. If you have a rider that's not riding fully balanced on them, you can have an issue. So like one of my clients, I work on 2 of her barrel racing horses. Both horses have issues on their right side only, more than their left. The left side feels great, but the right side is always tense. So I ask her, what's going on with your right side? And I have no medical history of this client. Like, I don't pry into their medical stuff or personal whatever, but I'll ask.
Of the person.
Yeah. I'm like, what's going on with your right side? She's like, she looks at me and she's like, well, I injured my, right knee, so I'm not as strong on that side. Okay, well, your horse is compensating for that. So they're always going to be a little sore on that right side. So we need to do more work on that right side to help rebalance their body, because they're basically picking up the slack for you, where you have that weakness. And so I've been lucky enough to see a lot of these where I see the trends. And I don't mind asking, like, what's going on with your shoulder or with that. And there's quite a bit of correlation to that.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So don't just take care of your horse's body. You got to take care of your body too.
Yeah, to hopefully prevent something developing with the horse. Stretching the horses. You know what? Before I actually move into stretching, on massage, I wanted to ask you, when you started working and you had those good experiences in the beginning with the horse race owner who noticed some positive effects, and then the word of mouth spread, did you feel like you're helping the horse? Like when you were first touching them and putting all these different pressure points? And was this you already like trained, so you felt confident in techniques that you've learned, or is this you intuitively touching them in different areas, putting pressure on different areas to see the results, to see to see if you get any feedback from the horses?
At that point, I was utilizing what I had learned so far, and this is a constant journey. I mean, I've been doing it for over 20 years and I'm still learning.
Yeah.
Every single horse I work on teaches me something. And at that point, it was just listening to that horse and letting that horse guide me through every session. But they really do appreciate it, and they look at you and thank you. And you do get that feedback reciprocated from that horse when you're doing something that they really enjoy.
So you get that satisfactory
you do.
Thank you as well from the horse afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's always funny.
I'll back you up, because I could see it on you when you were working with them, and I guess we only did maybe some short clips. I don't think you gave them a full session,
right?
Which maybe they're more thankful for.
Yeah, and it's always funny. The very first massage, like if the horse has never had massage before, and I come in and I'm just getting them used to it a little bit, getting them to touch. It's funny because you can almost see it on their face, like, what is this? Where's the saddle? Is she not riding me? Is she a vet? Where's the needle? Like they're kind of looking at this like, well, this feels weird.
Yeah.
This is unique. Like it kind of takes them a moment to settle into it. Like, well, what's happening? And then they feel different sensations in their body. And then the next session, so coming back for their second massage, it's kind of that process. They're like, oh, I remember her.
Yeah.
And then they start to really be like, oh, here. Yep, lady, this is where it hurts. And they kind of show you. I've had horses even turn their nose and point to the area that hurts. It's crazy. Yeah. And then by the third, and then after they've had this for a while, they get kind of bossy. And they're just like, they put themselves where you want you. Like, I have a horse, if you walk out to the pasture, he turns his butt to you because he wants you to rub his butt. And he's very, pushy about it. He's like, no, lady, you're here.
Yeah.
It's time to rub that part. and they do get demanding
Yeah.
sometimes, but it's kind of cool.
So stretching is a bit different. Because again, from the outside, it seems way more difficult to administer to the horse. Just logistically more difficult, like picking up the leg of the horse or trying to get into certain areas that may be more intimate or more delicate for the horse.
Yeah.
So how did you integrate that into your practice? And how did, just because it seems like a more difficult barrier maybe to learn and get into and have the horses cooperate with you.
Yeah, it's getting comfortable physically to pick up the horse's feet. You know, that's something that as you learn anything with horses, you have to clean out their feet every day. Or before you ride them, you should be picking out their feet.
Another chore to the list.
Another chore to the list,
Yeah.
you know, because you don't want debris to build up because they can get fungus in there, they can get thrush, they can get bacteria that grows, especially if they're standing in a wet environment or in their manure all day. So we want to keep that clean because if you don't have a hoof, you don't have a horse.
Yeah.
So taking care of their feet are really important too. And when you're massaging, my clients are typically having horses that are used to their feet being picked up and messed with and touched. But I do get the occasional ones that they might not be as comfortable picking up their feet. So safety is a big part of stretching because you don't want to be kicked. I have been kicked at and it's no fun. So
That's like the one thing that everyone, even non-horse people like myself, know about horses is beware from the kicks. Right?
Have fear.
Kicks backwards.
And it's you have to have fear a little bit because that's your
Respect.
self-preservation.
Yeah.
You know, if you feel that it's not a safe thing, listen to your instincts. You know, if the owner's not comfortable picking up the back feet, there's no reason that I should.
Yeah.
You know, so coming from the safety standpoint, it should be something. And as you're working with the horses, this is what they're trained to do. They're trained to stand there and let you pick up their feet. And it's a whole part of the whole training regimen. And we just do it in kind of a different way. You know, farriers come and trim the horse's hooves. So, and that's done every 6 to 8 weeks normally. So they've had this constantly. So
Yeah.
it's not as scary as one would think unless you're working with a younger, inexperienced horse. Then it gets a little sketchy.
Yeah.
But a typical riding horse that gets his feet picked out, the stretching isn't as dangerous as you would think.
It just seems kind of difficult to do.
It's intimidating, and a lot of people are worried that they're going to do something wrong
Yeah.
or
So
incorrectly.
can you start slowly? Like you don't have to, like with humans, right? You don't want to dive into a stretch
Right.
too deep without slowly building into it.
Yep. I'm not going to take your foot and put it over your head and
Yeah.
expect you to, you know, reach your
Yeah.
ears with it the first day.
Yeah.
But, you know, if we did just small increments, just like any exercise regimen, just start out slow and build.
Yeah.
And you might get a 5-second stretch on a front leg. Call that a win. The next day you might get 10 seconds of that stretch.
So when do you, like you have 16 horses here roaming at any given time. And so when do they get the stretching or the massage treatment? Is it when you spot something wrong with them? Or is it like a continuous thing that you do every once in a while?
So any of our horses that we ride on a regular basis are getting a lot of the massage and stretching on a regular basis too. We have a couple young ones that aren't broke out here. They don't get as much attention.
On broke?
They're not saddle broke, so they
Oh.
don't. We can't ride them yet because they're younger.
Okay, not trained yet?
They're not
Yeah.
trained yet.
Yeah.
And so they don't get as much of the attention as the ones that we use or compete on and stuff like that on a regular basis. But, you know, they will as you start going through the training regimen.
Yeah.
It's just like any athlete where you're conditioning your body to do whatever it is you're training to do.
Yeah.
You need to take care of that. You know, football players, they do all kinds of therapy. They do ice baths, they do saunas, they do stretching, they have their own massage therapists, they have chiropractors, they have everything to keep their body going to do whatever sport they're doing.
Yeah. So you mentioned, just because you mentioned the
Yeah.
football players, I asked you also a little bit earlier, we said we'll continue here, about the cold exposure. It's very trendy now, you know, for even non-athletes, people just
Yeah.
want to take care of their body to, jump into an ice bath. You see this a lot now on social media, books. Yeah, do you expose the horses too cold in any way?
Yeah, so we ice the hocks, we cold hose a lot of things. There's different devices out there on the market to where you can fill ice boots. One of the fun things, so if you're around an area where there's lots of flies, a lot of horses have the fly boots on their legs. Mm-hmm. Well, some people kind of do a cheat way and fill those fly boots up with ice to cool down tendons, because studies have shown that excessive heat, so like leaving polo wraps on or sport boots after competition, will heat up those tendons and could cause some deterioration in there. So icing them afterwards can be beneficial, and instead of the horse standing in a bucket of ice, they put the ice in the fly boots. So that kind of holds it in, and as it melts, it kind of gets a little bit of ice.
But I believe I saw one of your horses earlier, and it's 90 plus degrees right now outside, but with some sort of blanket over them.
Though that's just a fly sheet. So it's a mesh, meshy material. So they don't get so hot in it, and it just protects them from the flies that are around. And
because does it just like us now? Every time I get a fly on me, it kind of makes me twitch and it annoys me, distracts me. So are they the same? They hate the flies?
They hate the flies, yes.
And because of the flies, like you can see when a fly lands on the body of a horse, that it keeps twitching in a different way than I do. So when a fly now lands on my forearm, I need to move my whole hand or my whole arm to get rid of the fly. That's my twitch. But a horse will twitch the exact spot where the fly is sitting. And you were saying that's because of their awareness to their body, their connection to their body, to their muscles, which is different than ours.
Yep, they have that extra layer of sensory, and their fascia is all throughout their body and has all kinds of communication, nerves and everything that runs through. So they know exactly which muscle to twitch to get that fly off of them.
Do you think that we have that ability as well? We just maybe lost it or haven't developed it? Do we have that potential?
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's something that I do play with, because you do have these different like therapy methods or training methods that maybe look a bit silly from the outside, because it seems like in a training session where the person might not move much, but it's like guided training to start thinking about your body internally in a different way, to start having more control over specific areas of your body, muscles that you don't really think of, because we have so many muscles. It's easy to think about moving the superficial muscles, but all the internal muscles that are there that we don't see are difficult. So that's always an interesting one to me, and has sparked my interest in it, seeing all the horses twitching nonstop around it. So the cold exposure is something that's in the discussion of horse therapy.
Yeah, well, and there's even cryotherapy for horses. So the cryotherapy, there's a device, so it'll, it's like nitrogen coal or whatever that they can put on the muscles to freeze it, just like they do with human athletes. So a lot of the horse therapies that are out there nowadays are based off of what's been working for people. So, using essential oils for people is going to cross over very well. We're all mammals.
Yeah.
We all have blood flow, we have nerves, we have circulatory, we have the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system for horses is the same as us. In order to get your lymph nodes and everything in that system to move, you have to move. For the horses, we kind of say the horses have 5 hearts, because each hoof, as it steps, actually helps push the blood flow back up the leg, and it affects the lymphatic system too. So when a horse is standing in a stall for a long period, and we call it stocking up, where they start to get a little bit of fluid filled in their back legs, the only way to kind of work that up is through moving that horse.
Just like us when we on a plane for 12 hours.
Exactly. You get edema, and that's, you got to move around a little bit to keep everything circulating.
Yeah. So you said earlier that like one of the horses, I forget what the story was exactly, but you didn't want to massage the horse because he was too skinny. Yeah. So would that be like a contraindication to massaging a horse? Like,
well, you can still massage, but there's not when you have a horse that's just skin and bones,
So is
there's
that bad?
not
Yeah.
a lot of muscle to massage. It's just bones. So your massage that you're doing is just going to be a lot of light effleurage because, you know, you have close tenderness along that. You don't want to massage over bones. It's like somebody rubbing over your shoulder blades. It's
Yeah.
not very comfortable, you know, so you can kind of work in between with the connective tissue. You can still massage. It's just going to be a different massage and different pressures that you're using.
So you said you taught a lot of people to ride in the past, and it's something you still do. You still do riding lessons
do.
for people, and they come out here.
Yep.
And adults as well.
Adults as well.
So even individuals like myself who don't know how to ride as
Yeah.
an adult from scratch to like start from
We
somewhere.
teach everything from how to pick out horses' feet to saddle to bridle.
But riding specifically, what is the? I told you that the last time was 20 plus years ago that I rode. I was a little kid, and I remember it as something terrifying because this huge animal that I was sitting on top of, and I felt so high up. Like I was only thinking about. This guy wants to get out. I was
He
only.
needs more hay. That's what he's saying.
I will. Well, we're almost there. I was all I'm thinking about it is I want to get down safely of this thing and never do this again. And today I did it again for the first time. Here we have our friend saying hello. Oh, she likes sticking her.
Yeah, watch out for them claws.
Yeah. Wow. Come on. Come on. Come on. Whoops.
It's like
There we
Velcro.
go. There we go. And just like Cammy, she ruined my my favorite jeans. Where were we?
You were
The
getting that,
riding.
you wanted
Oh,
to
so getting off the horse was my only thought, to get off as soon as possible. And she likes me. And getting off the horse was my priority. And this morning I did it, and I felt a bit better than I did, 20 something years ago. But is there some psychological barrier that you see, like common to people that have not grown up around horses? How easy is it in your eyes to get over it? Because I'm assuming you've seen success stories.
That's where the person riding the horse really has to trust in me. And, you know, thankfully you trusted me to get on a horse that I told you that would be safe for you.
I did.
But it's really about experience. You know, when you're learning from somebody, really trust that person, trust that horse, because there has been bad situations that do happen. You know, one of my adult lesson people went to a friend's house and they put her on their barrel horse. Well, the horse saw the barrel pattern and just took off with her and she fell off. And it's really hard after you've
And
had
I got up today in front of the barrels as well.
Yeah,
So
but I
lucky that
held
didn't
on
happen.
to you,
Yeah,
so you
yeah.
were okay. But I mean, once you lose that confidence, it's really hard to get that back.
Yeah.
Because learning how to trust. If you've had a bad thing happen, it's hard to get past that to actually trust to do that again. So my job is to make sure that the person coming to learn is comfortable with me and comfortable with the horse before they even get on that horse.
Is it a quick learning curve?
Sometimes everybody's different. And that's why we just take it at the person's pace. You know, we might have 2 lessons where you ride for 10 minutes and then get off, you know, and then just gradually increase. But it's all about that confidence building.
Yeah. So, and when I get on a horse, I also, a part of me feels guilty a little bit because I know I'm a heavy guy. Do they put much attention into whether I weigh 150 pounds or 200 pounds or 300 pounds? Do they?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's...
So they prefer someone who's like a kid to get on?
They prefer, they don't want too big of a rider on them, so I have to determine what size of a horse they can ride. Just because you're a bigger person, bigger, hefty guy, whatever, it just means you need a bigger horse.
Yeah.
That's why there's all different sizes and breeds of horses. Littler ponies for kids can be difficult sometimes because sometimes ponies are the devil and they get very naughty. So Shetland ponies, little ponies can be very naughty for
not
ride.
as cute as they portray them in the movies.
They try to get away with stuff. They're the sly little ones. And ponies tend to live older. They live longer, just like little dogs versus big dogs. and they can be a lot smarter and wiser and try to get out of work. So they might try to dump the kid before like a big horse. And the bigger the horse, sometimes they call them the gentle giants, you know, because you can have just a sweetheart of a big horse. But you do want to watch the weight limits on horses. Heavier riders can cause a lot of sore back issues, and saddle fit is important too. If the saddle's not fitting right and you have a heavy rider, that can be a problem. But if the person that's bigger rides properly, they won't have any problems. You can have a small rider who bounces a lot that can hurt the horse's back more than that bigger rider that rides the correct way.
I see. So you also want to have, as a rider, you want to have to learn your body, how your body responds to the ride itself. Yeah.
Your balance, your skills are going to be affected onto that too.
Amazing. Good. Look, I definitely learned the last couple of days and in this last hour or so more about horses than I've had my entire life. So thank you, and thank you for the experience this morning. It was really, really cool, and thank you for this super great episode. You know, most of our listeners are somewhat in the therapy world. So also for you, did you have experience of, you know, because you teach people, you certify people to become massage therapists specifically for horses. Have you taught people who are massage therapists for humans, who have transitioned into horses or who do horses as well as, and is it a, maybe somewhat of an easy transition? Like, are there many overlap similarities?
There is. There's a lot of people that are kind of getting out of doing human massage that want to kind of see what this animal massage is all about.
Yeah.
So whether they want to use this for continuing ed credits or whatever, but it is easy to teach them the horse part of things. And I love it when human massage therapists come and take the course. They already have the touch and the feel of the muscles, so they already kind of know the pressure and give. It's easy for me to teach them the horse side of things and the safety and that, because it's almost like you're starting with a clean slate with non-horse people.
Yeah.
Horse people kind of tend to have their own, like they've done it that way for so long that it's hard for them to change, versus people that are just starting out. I'm kind of starting with that clean slate or from scratch.
Yeah, makes sense.
And we have very docile horses here that are used to, so even beginners.
Awesome. So I think that's so everything we spoke about is super beneficial to myself, but also to many therapists out there who have never worked on a horse, or maybe they've been intrigued by potentially working on a horse. But so we filmed courses the last couple of days. We'll have a stretching course online available soon, and a massage course, both specifically for horses. We've had a few beautiful models here: Pete, King, Gypsy, and
don't forget Henry.
And Henry, who wants to get out and eat. So we will let him. So thank you very much for doing this. It was really fun, awesome. I enjoyed it, and adapted to this beautiful made-up studio. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun.
Awesome.
If you liked this video and you want to see more, make sure to subscribe below and don't forget to hit the notification button.